hopefully hi Jordy, nice to see you, sir.
Hi, sir. Nice to see you. Season greetings. And
Season's greetings.
I'm here. I want to testify my gratitude.
Oh, thank you so much, sir.
You,
It,
sir, you are an artist and you have the love of the public.
thank you. Well, we'll see if I'm an artist here shortly, because I'm gonna display a couple of artworks in process and see what people think of them.
Skip, did you always paint?
No, I started when I was 45.
I always wanted to be an artist and I always wanted to draw. And do you have any tips for where to start?
Uh, Start where you are and go from there. You just keep doing it.
Yeah, that's pretty much the universal thing that I hear is just doodle a lot, no matter.
Yeah, and I found my métier in doodle, as you'll see momentarily here. Let me just see here. Okay. Good morning, Art. Nice to see you today. Okay, I got my greeting out on YouTube, and I have LaDonna, nice to see you. Where do you live, LaDonna?
I'm in Indiana. It's nice to see you too this morning.
Say it again.
I'm in Indiana.
Indiana, okay.
Yes.
And are you engaged in Jung in some way?
Yeah, I began reading him about 8 years ago and decided to go back to school for a degree in psychology about 3 years ago. So that's caused me to pull back on being engaged as much as I was previously with his works. But I'm trying to loop back in some way.
Okay, well, we have looped in. Let's see if I can get back. Okay, there we are. The I've been doing it for 36 years, going on 37, as you may know. And there's never an end to it. There's only a continuation of it. And so I've now put over 1,400 videos on this channel, and so there's lots to find here. And Jordan Hoggard and I have, for the last 2 years, pretty dependably put up a full layman's commentary on the Red Book. Today we're going to complete Liber Secundus, which is the second major part of the Red Book. And then after the holiday, we'll start with scrutinies, which includes the Seven Sermons to the Dead. Now, I have read the Seven Sermons of the Dead before into the channel. And so if you want to hear them, you can find them by doing a search with seven sermons. But I don't think I put a commentary, or if I did, it was very perfunctory. So now we're doing more complicated stuff, and so let's see who we've got. Melis here. Okay, good. Good morning, Jordan. Nice to see you this morning. How are you?
Good, thank you. Good to see you too.
Cars
nice to have a good group
and,
here.
Yep. Yeah, I sent out a season's greetings to everybody on my list, so that was an excuse to do it because it's year end, and as a result, I've drawn in a few more people. If you want to notice every week, please go to the link and to the MailChimp link, and there you can register for weekly invitations. We are not doing the Monday night meeting anymore. I just can't do that much anymore because I'm teaching school full time in a very challenging school, and so far I'm surviving, so that's a good sign. And this holiday season, I'm certified to teach social studies in the state of New York, which became permanent in 1974, but I've been certified, even provisionally certified, since 1968. And I never taught a day before September of 22 in K through 12. I've taught a lot of other things. I've taught in graduate school, I've taught in university, and I've taught in the Marine Corps, but I never taught K through 12 until a year and a half ago. And my evaluation of the experience is that we don't pay teachers anywhere near enough, and it's a much more difficult job. Today, it's a much more difficult job than it was when I started, of course, but it's much more difficult than the Marine Corps, at least.
Do you think it's more enjoyable and rewarding?
Well, let's say I'm enjoying. I'm finding that I do enjoy it, and so that I can say fairly clearly that I am enjoying what I'm doing, and I'm hoping to continue as long as I can get back and forth to school. Mind you, I walk with a cane these days, and I'm 77 years old, so it gets kind of achy. But aside from that, I'm enjoying the challenge. Is it rewarding? Occasionally, it's quite rewarding. I mean, occasionally you identify a child that you've made a big difference for. And we have in my school, which is a public school, but it's a public school where children who have been suspended twice, usually for behavior, or they've done something really bad, or let's say moderately bad, and they've got a 45-day suspension from their public school, end up at our school for the term of their suspension. And the two-time losers come and they usually stay with us for at least a quarter. And so these kids are relatively undisciplined. They're very challenging when they first come, but when we send them back, we think that they're more mature. I had one young man who was very introverted and came on a 45-day suspension. Apparently, he got into a fight or something. It was probably a pretty bad fight because you only get sent home for 5 days if you're in a fight. But if you're in a bad one, then you might get 45 days. And but he's very introverted and he's very smart. And I spent 45 days with us and went back, and I know that he's going to be a very great success in his life. I'm sure of that.
Well, I'll
So,
tell you what, I was in a behavioral modification class starting in 6th grade and lasting through 7th grade. And, for those with eyes to see and ears to hear, someone like you can make a big difference in a kid's life.
yeah, I think that's true. And I guess I would urge everyone. I'm gonna send everyone that's in my orbit that I know to a short essay, 1-page essay. Jordy, yes, you have a
Just to
question.
say hello to Jordan.
Oh, okay.
Part of him is missing. Now you almost have no beard.
Santa Claus has left your presence.
You look like an Old Testament patriarch or something at some point.
That's a dubious honor. Thank you.
So this is what I intend to send out as sort of a Christmas card. I'm going to write a letter to all of my colleagues and put it in their mailbox at the end of this week because they are just a remarkable group of people. There's the faculty and staff of this school is all empathy, and they're all doing their best to help these children. And I'm not sure I can read it. I read it the other day and I get emotional when I read it. But it's an essay by Clarissa Pinkola Estes, who's the author of Women Who Run with the Wolves. And the name of the essay is You Were Made for This. So I can't send it to you folks, all of you. So I'll just read it to you. It's very short. Ours is not the task of fixing the entire world all at once, but of stretching out to mend the part of the world that is within our reach. Any small thing that one soul can do to help another soul, to assist some portion of this poor suffering world, will help immensely. It is not given to us to know which acts or by whom will cause the critical mass to tip toward an enduring good. What is needed is dramatic change. What is needed for dramatic change is an accumulation of acts, adding to, adding more, continuing. We know that it does not take everyone on earth to bring justice and peace, but only a small, determined group who will not give up during the first, second, or 100th gale. One of the most calming and powerful actions you can take to intervene in a stormy world is to stand up and show your soul. Soul on deck shines like gold in dark times. The light of the soul throws sparks, can send up flares, builds signal fires, causes proper matters to catch fire. To display the lantern of soul in shadowy times like these, to be fierce and to show mercy toward others, both are acts of immense bravery and greatest necessity. Struggling souls catch light from other souls who are fully lit and willing to show it. If you would help to calm the tumult, this is one of the strongest things you can do. There will always be times when you feel discouraged. I too have felt despair many times in my life, but I do not keep a chair for it. I will not entertain it. It is not allowed to eat from my plate. In that spirit, I hope you will write this on your wall. When a great ship is in harbor and moored, it is safe. There can be no doubt. But that is not what great ships are built for. So, anyway, you can just Google it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Sorry.
No, thank you.
It's great for those kids.
Okay,
They're
so this essay can easily be found on through Google. It's called You Were Made for This, and it's by Clarissa Pinkola Estes. Judith, now that you're here, I can display my latest work and my plan. Okay, I've always been trying to find my own métier in my creative art. And this week I think I finally found it. And I've worked through the doodle and the Rocky and everything, and this is really a combination of that. I know as an artist, I am unable to produce a beautiful rendition of a figurative item. And it's not mine to do that. I didn't go to art school like my friend Tim Holmes did. He draws beautiful drawings, and he's very creative about it. And he does obviously sculpture, and but mine is not to do that. And what I've found through doing the Rocky and the doodle with Colleen, and she's quite right, is that I can draw my own unconscious. Okay, I can take a snapshot of my unconscious on a given day. And so I was looking for a gift that I could give a couple of dear friends, three of them who I've known since 1962 from high school, when we went to high school in Japan together. And they all have everything they need and really want. And Judith, you're on display here.
Can you tell I'm just getting up? Great. Oh, now I'll go on YouTube. Now I'll go on YouTube. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Sorry to interrupt your train of flow. You were in a good flow, Skip.
I'm trying to figure out what you were doing. I thought you were trying to stay
Yeah, putting my jeans on.
Yes, okay, well, it happens. I'll see if I can find that section and delete it on the recording. Okay, anyway.
It's okay. No worries.
Anyway, well, we saw nothing. We only saw you in your t-shirt. It was
It's very PG-13.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a was it NSFW? Not safe for work.
Yeah. So anyway, so it came to me that I should give my friends some of the work I've been doing. And yesterday I cooked up one piece, and it's working today. So I thought I would show it to you, show you what I did yesterday and the start of today. Let's see here. I have to move that up so I can reach the share screen. Here we go. Okay, so I did this yesterday for one of my friends, and I called this 2024, and it sort of sums up my psyche for 2024. And if you have heard some of these sessions before, you know what the 4 quadrants mean. But the left side is the past, the right side is the future. The lower left is the creative wellspring, and the upper left is dreams and visions, among other things. The upper right is mission, and the lower right is what you have to work with right now. So that's going to one of my friends tomorrow. And then this is what I started to do today. And I've started a new strategy where in my doodling, I'm not using pen any longer. I'm using just the lightest color of paint that I can find to do my actual doodle. so that it gets absorbed into the color as I do the painting. And the name of this came to me instantly when I saw this, because it reminded me of a head, of course. And here I see joy, okay, and I'm going to call this joy. But I see a lot of other things too. First of all, I see a skull here halfway down on the right in the shadow. And I also see a profile of our former president here, among other things. And so they both came up. And so anyway, I've decided to start to auction these things off on eBay and see if anybody salutes. Let's see. Oh, this is a photograph that was taken at Colleen Keybear's home by Penelope Ryder, who's one of our regular followers. And Penelope, this is a photo that she took when she was visiting Colleen's home. And this is quite an amazing thing, because on the left here is a Christmas tree, and this is supposed to be an angel of Christ. But look at what happens when you expand this picture. It's just remarkable what this picture is. Okay, I assume everybody has seen what I'm talking about. I'm not going to speak about it. You either see it or you don't see it, but it's quite an amazing photograph. Okay, and let's see. Oh, I just one more fun picture I'm gonna show you. One of the things I get to do in this school is do project-based learning. And so that's a 1-hour class every day. And I've been leading one of these project-based learning things, and we are, what I did was I read to the students. There's only 5 in my class, and usually I only get 2 or 3 in a day because there's a lot of absences. But we're doing a mural of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. And I read it to the kids in an illustrated version in the first 6 weeks of this quarter. And so this is a mural we're doing on it, and we're gonna put the name of it, the name of the novel across it in the lower area here. But this is the giant squid, and up here you see it's grabbing onto the Nautilus, which is the ship of Captain Nemo in 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. And what you see here is what we painted in a period of about 30 minutes. About 2 or 3 students and I painted this mural. So it's a humble thing, but I thought you'd like to see that just for fun. And it's going to be quite remarkable when it's done, I think. Okay, moving back to Jung. It's time to talk about Jung, because we need to get through the magician.
So Skip,
yes.
do you only work on that an hour a week or an hour a day? The students
An hour
come?
a day, 1 hour
Hour
a day.
Oh, that's great.
And we already did a Rocky mural. Okay, in this group, I have 5 students, and as I said, I only have 2 or 3 each day who show up. Either they're in detention or they're not present, or something's going on with them. And so I only get 2 or 3 each day, and it's not the same 2 or 3. But I decided to try to do a Rocky with them, and we did it. We put the ground down in 1 day. Whoever was present that day, I don't even recall. And then I saw that in order to draw the images on the Rocky, I didn't have enough manpower, keeping in mind that the one I did at the elementary school I was working in last spring, I had 650 students working on it, right? And this one I had 2 or 3. So the art teacher loves the project, however. She thinks it's the greatest thing that she's seen in her 12 years of teaching. And she volunteered to have all the students in the school do it, work on it. And so they've done that now, and it too is remarkable, like the other one. And once we unveil it, it's I haven't stretched it out to take a picture of it yet, but it's 24 feet long, 42 inches wide, and all 55 students in the school have worked on it, grades 6 through 9. And so they'll all have a piece of it. And she's identified a place in the cafeteria where it can be mounted. And so I have my work cut out for me to get all that done soon. And but anyway, that's so my thought is that I'm gonna, as time goes on, starting in 24, I'm gonna start auctioning my paintings on eBay and just see what happens. And I have some good ones. One sad note is that I took a portfolio of mine to Confluence, and it has disappeared. So somehow I either misplaced it or something. So somebody's got a whole lot of my and calligraphy work. But anyway, okay. So this is a short but fairly difficult to comprehend section of The Magician, and I hope to complete it today. And it's very important, as you'll see. So I will begin it, and then we'll share some of the reading. And this is taking place on February 23rd, 1914. So again, at this point in the Red Book, and we've read almost all of it now, except for scrutinies, we're only 2 months into all of Dr. Jung's visioning period, which was the basis of all of his later work. And I think, as you've seen or will see, it is incredibly remarkable material once you get into it and read it yourself. And obviously I've read the Red Book many times now. This is the second time I've read it through online. So I can prove that. And I've now read all the Black books, cover to cover. I'm probably one of the few that ever did that. But in any case, reading on here, I'm on page 448 of the Red Book by C.G. Jung, the Reader's Edition. And here we go. In the beginning of all things is love, but the being of all things is life. This distinction is terrible. Why? Why, O spirit of the darkest depths, do you force me to say that whoever loves does not live, and whoever lives does not love? I always get it backward. Should everything be turned into its opposite? Will there be a sea? Will there be a sea where Philemon's temple stands? Will this shady island sink into the deepest ground? In the whirlpool of the withdrawing flood that earlier swallowed all peoples and lands, Will the bottom of the sea be where our rot arises? Okay, there's a couple footnotes here. I think I should read the previous footnote too. Oh, okay, yeah, it's there. So the first sentence here is, the beginning of all things is love, but the being of things is life. And the footnote reads, in Transformations and Symbols of the Libido, while discussing his concept of libido, Jung referred to the cosmogonic significance of Eros in Hesiod's Theogony, which he linked with the figure of Phanes in Orphism and with Kama, the Hindu god of love. And that's from Collected Works B, paragraph 223. And then another sentence here, should everything be turned into its opposite? And the footnote reads, in later work, Jung gave importance to enantiodromia, the principle that everything turns into its opposite, which he attributed to Heraclitus. See Psychological Types, Collected Works 6, paragraph 708 and following. And the last sentence here, will the bottom of the sea be where Ararat arises? And the footnote reads, in the biblical account of the flood, the ark came to rest on Mount Ararat, Genesis 8:4. Ararat is a dormant volcano cone formerly in Armenia, now Turkey. Okay, comments on this first paragraph, which is quite important, obviously.
I think it's important to bring in the life part rather than it's kind of one of those, life is what passes you by when you're too busy making plans, where
Right.
the living part is the verb that works instead of, you can destroy an idea by talking it away instead
Sure.
of just go make something of beauty or try to simply express it, which, as we know, I'm relatively incapable of doing. So,
Yeah. Okay. What repulsive words do you mutter, you mute son of the earth? You want to sever my soul's embrace? You, my son, do you thrust yourself between? Who are you? And who gives you the power? Everything that I strove for, everything I wrested from myself, do you want to reverse it again and destroy it? You are the son of the devil, to whom everything holy is inimical. You grow overpowering. You frighten me. Let me be happy in the embrace of my soul, and do not disturb the peace of the temple. Off with you, you pierce me with paralyzing force, for I do not want your way. Should I languidly fall at your feet? You devil and son of the devil, speak. Your silence is unbearable and of awful stupidity. I won my soul, and to what did she give birth for me? You monster, a son, ha! A frightful miscreant, a stammerer, a newt's brain, a primordial lizard. You want to be king of the earth. You want to banish proud freemen, bewitch beautiful women, break up castles, rip open the belly of old cathedrals. Dumb thing, a lazy bug-eyed frog that wears pondweed on his skull's pate. And you want to call yourself my son? You're no son of mine, but the spawn of the devil. The father of the devil entered into the womb of my soul, and in you has become flesh. I recognize you, Philemon. You most cunning of all fraudsters. You have deceived me. You impregnated my maidenly soul with the terrible worm. Philemon, damned charlatan, you ape the mysteries for me. You lay the mantle of the stars on me. You played a Christ fool's comedy with me. You hanged me carefully and ludicrously in the tree, just like Odin. You let me devise runes to enchant Salome, and meanwhile you procreated my soul with the worm, spew of the dust. Deception upon deception, terrible devil trickery. And the footnote reads, in Norse mythology, Odin was pierced by a spear and hung from the world tree. Yggdrasil, where the world tree, Yggdrasil, where he hung for 9 nights until he found the runes, which gave him power. Which gave him power. Okay. All right, comments here. What's happening?
What
He's being
page is
crucified.
that?
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. What page is that?
We're on page 448, 449 is what we've just read.
He's understanding the unconscious and the dark is emerging from him. The crucifixion, as it were, with the Odin metaphor, the piercing on the side. There's a lower aorta out of the liver. The blood is darker. I mean, so there's a depth of life, literally, from that portion of being speared in that side. And he's emerging now. And he's also balking at the fact that he's, calling this new thing a trickster because he's having to lose himself.
Right. And probably he never really, I mean, he must have known of enantiodromia before this, but he never really realized how powerful it is. And here, suddenly, he has a revelation that it really is the thing, and that he not only does it exist, but he cannot stop it, and it is within all of us. And so whatever we might think now about our public affairs, for example, whatever position we hold, we tend toward the opposites, whether we like it or not. Further comment? Anybody?
Well, and that either or is not the both and there's no dignity in the difference. There's usually just conflict in the disagreement. Conflict in the disagreement.
Right, but it's both exist within us, right? Both exist.
Right, but not in that conflict. People move to
not in the conflict. That's the significant thing about the human. Okay, we as humans carry in us both Philemon and Ha, or both Salome and our soul, and Ha, who is this terrible devil that he's describing. And Philemon is showing him that through a series of things, which he's realizing, oh my God, this is me. And it's coming immediately into Jung's reality and understanding that everything is based on enantiodromia, all opposites, and that we are the human being who holds the two snakes, one for health and one as evil, and it's within us that those two exist, and we have to manage them, both snakes.
I would say too, it's the human condition that way is quite a shame that humans are the only being on the planet that have to reason themselves into existence. And even the Stoics talking about don't be afraid of death and stare death in the face. And it's to me a bunch of bunk, because there's animals will live, fight, die, procreate, eat until they're not alive. And instead of fight like heck or reason your way through or prioritize. It's just simply living. And I think it goes back to the start of this section of the verb to live, and that man has to reason ourselves into being. There's a lot of too much explanation, and I'm always like, well, which parent are you still trying to prove to, instead of just live it?
Two verbs though. It's to love and to live. Okay, and he's implying that they're opposites here. Okay, that's something that everybody has to take home and think about themselves. But
the opposites, I think, are in love, but I think live has no concern with opposites whatsoever. It is in a totality rather than breaking it down to differentiate.
I mean, he's working up to seeing that it's both sides of a dilemma, right? Loving and living and being. They're all sides of a dilemma. We live them all, right?
Yeah, and I think a dilemma that we fabricated. It means disconnected from nature.
Yeah. Okay.
Live, laugh, love.
Yeah. Live, laugh, love, pray, right? Okay, reading on. You gave me the force of magic. You crowned me. You clad me with the shimmer of power that let me play a would-be Joseph father to your son. You lodged a puny basilisk in the nest of the dove. My soul, you adulterous whore, you became pregnant with this bastard. I am dishonored. I, laughable father of the Antichrist. How I mistrusted you, and how poor was my mistrust that it could not gauge the magnitude of this infamous act. What do you break apart? You broke love and life in twain. From this ghastly sundering, the frog and the son of the frog come forth. Ridiculous, disgusting sight. Irresistible advent. They will sit on the banks of the sweet water and listen to the nocturnal song of the frogs, since their God has been born as a son of frogs. Where is Salome? Where is the unresolvable question of love? No more questions. My gaze turned to the coming things, and Salome is where I am. The woman follows your strongest, not you. The woman follows your strongest, not you. Thus she bears your children in both good and a bad way. As I stood so alone on the earth, which was covered by rain clouds and falling night, my serpent crept up to me and told me a story. Okay, now there's a footnote. February 23rd, 1914. In Black Book 4, the dialogue is with the soul, and this section begins with Jung asking her what is stopping him from getting back to his work, and she tells him that it is his ambition. He thought he had overcome it, but she said that he had simply negated it, and thus tells him the tale that follows. Page 171. On February 13th, 1914. Okay, so the tale was told to him on February 13th, 1914, 10 days earlier. Jung gave a talk on February 13, 1914. Jung gave a talk on dream symbolism to the Zurich Psychoanalytical Society. From March 30th to April 13th, he vacationed in Italy. Okay, so here is the story. Okay, anybody want to comment up till here, though?
when he says getting on with his work, that's Jung speaking, right? And I thought,
Yeah,
wasn't he seeing 8 or 10 patients a day during this whole time as well?
absolutely. Yes, he was.
Mhm.
Yeah, and in the footnotes, mainly in the black books, Shamdasani recounts every day and how many patients he saw. So he was seeing all these patients in the day. So you're talking 6 or 7 hours, maybe 8 hours of psychoanalysis on 8 different people. And then in the evening, after he's had his dinner, he's doing this.
And I think that's an important comment, Judith, because getting back to his work is getting back to his inner work, his job in life here. That's a great point. So then the 6 or 8 patients a day, our clients, that's just foundational. That's the dirt, the ground in his garden that he's tilling and working with other people. It's kind of his forensics, his fact structures that are coming out in terms of, anecdotal examples that then I think his work, capital W, pulls in at night, which appropriately in the dark, the unconscious, then his work is not he's punching his own Jungian clock during the day. He's working on the red book in various forms, whether it's just note taking or it's actually on it.
Well, Judith, maybe you would comment on how difficult it is to handle 6 to 8 patients a day. I can't imagine it. It's the one reason that I never went to try to get a degree in psychology, even after I realized that there was something about Jung I loved, and the thought crossed my mind, oh, I could go to the Jung Institute and become an analyst. And I could have done this in the early 90s very easily. And although I thought I was sort of career ending, I realized that I could do that. But then I couldn't think of anything more horrific than being in the psyches of 6 or 8 different people, not me, in a day.
Well, it is interesting. How old was Jung when he was writing this? 30s? In his 30s?
He was
42.
37 when he started.
37.
Yeah.
So he'd been doing it for quite a number of years, and obviously his unconscious kept bubbling up and through, and he was in communication. And what I find at this point in my life, I used to see 6 or 7 people.
Mm-hmm.
I've been doing this for 35 years, and so I started in my mid-30s.
Yeah.
This profession, and now, and in the last many years, I only do 4, but I'm not doing it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And the actual liberation of fatigue is kind of astounding.
Uh-huh.
And Jordan, you may have something to say. It's more like actually trusting the liminal space between what happens when we sit down with intention to open the unconscious, to open to the consciousness. And yes, I have my whole tool bag of, like you said, graduate school, extra trainings, trauma informed, protocols. But I don't even go to that part of my prefrontal cortex. It sits there, it serves me, and I think that's why it's not exhausting. It's actually, and I feel Jung, I feel the resonance with him this way, because I feel like it is so interesting.
Mm-hmm.
The psyche is so vastly interesting.
Yeah.
I appreciate that you said that, because especially the not going to the prefrontal cortex, it's just, that's what I do. I mean, there were 2 days in a row last September of 2022 where I was at my table from in the morning until midnight, and 10 clients one day and 12 the next. And when I came home after the 12, I wasn't exhausted. I didn't feel like I had done anything at all, except I walked into the kitchen. I'm standing in front of the fridge, and all I think, oh, the fridge is black. And finally I went, oh, grab the handle. You have to pull it to get to the food. I mean, and I realized, oh, I've been in a Zen sit all day long. I didn't have to do anything. It was just naturally what I do. But this year, in this same seasonal piece, October through last week to early this next week, I've been working more on a friend of mine's house. And what's interesting is I notice just now, after 2.5 months, the exhaustion that I never addressed last year of I was going away. So I appreciate you said that. I don't go to the frontal lobe. It's there to serve me. I don't have to think about the tools. But when you said that, that really resonated because I hadn't thought about it that way. But it's up here, and all I have to do is use my mouth and observe, and I speak, and I don't record what I'm doing. And sometimes I go, wow, that was really, I should remember that. I should look at that myself. And I have no idea what I said. So that whole non-exhaustion, but it was exhaustion.
I feel Jung was there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
In potentially, Skip, I don't know, what's this like for you to hear? What's your...
Well, I concur. I think that because I was so entrenched in rationalism, okay, and my education and training up until my mid-40s was so, well, I guess it was my early 40s because it was 87, so I was 41 when I started reading Jung. Was so rational. It's taken a long time to crack that, to break that down. Okay. And now I've learned to trust it and I've learned to trust this process of my painting. And I finally got to the point where I know I've found my métier, okay, in terms of what I'm doing. And I concur that in all of these videos that I've made, I never have a clue what I've talked about at the end of it.
Right.
Yeah.
I just speak from the heart and
And
apparently,
are you tired, Skip, when you get off the YouTube?
never.
Off of our call?
Nope, never. Right.
Right.
And so I've learned to trust the process, right? And that started when I started doing my Jung group in the spaghetti house pizza house, which we did for several years. We did it until from 2016 until 2020 when COVID came. And then we were forced to go online. And of course, I connected with a lot of friends who are now dear friends of mine, who have done 2 confluences with me. And Colleen Kibert has taught me, it's Kibert. Colleen Kibert has taught me so much about the way the psyche works that I really love what's coming through me now. I feel like I'm kind of how do you say it? I'm a medium in a way, and even when I'm not trying to be a medium, I'm not trying to be a magician or anything, but we have 20 people listening to us on YouTube right now, in addition to the 7 of us who are here. And very typically these videos get within a couple of weeks they get 500 views, and some of them have gotten way more. I mean, We have one with Murray Stein that I think got 40,000 views or something like that. And so I know that people are finding them helpful, okay, and healing.
Yes.
And now I'm understanding that the issue isn't to cure, but rather to heal. I think there's a fine distinction there. Okay. I mean, you as a psychoanalyst would have to tell me. I don't know anything about your profession, honestly. I've never taken a
Right.
psychology course, and I never intend to. But I've found Jungian reading for my whole life, or for the last 37 years, 36, 37 years, to be healing for me personally. And finally, I decided to start to share that. And I started in 2010 by writing on a channel that I created, which I think is now falling apart, so I don't want to send people there. But that writing never, I was writing kind of in my lawyer-like way to persuade, but since I've been doing the videos and the meetings since 2016, I started to, really connect.
Right.
Yes. Because the stuff that I wrote, and I wrote a book, I published a book called Political Psychology, New Ideas for Activists. And I thought that's what I was doing, but that's not what I was doing. And now I know that. So.
Well, it's interesting too with the way you're doing the Rocky and the work. That's one thing I admire most about Colleen's work. Is there's an old quote somewhere that says, once you basically have your driver's license for the inner workings of your psyche, dispense with figuring out how you work and proceed immediately to make things of beauty. And I think what happens there is it doesn't negate the rationalism. The rationalism is just the rock of the volcano around the caldera, and you erupt. It's just a container. It's just a vessel.
Right.
I mean, I look at all the unfinished books I have that I was working on. Why couldn't last year I work on them? I mean, in a discipline or the ritual, I never have a problem with sitting down. I realized this year,
but he would
because they're useless. They're useless explanations. I don't need to do that. I need to make something that's beautiful, and that's simply experiential rather than talk, start to finish. So anyway.
Okay, I don't know what's happening here. I'm getting you twice, but
feedback, is it?
I don't know if it might be on my end. Let me see. I'm gonna read this story. Can you hear me in real time, Jordan?
Yes.
All right. Let me just read on here. Once upon a time there was a king, and he had no children, but he would have liked to have a son. So he went to a wise woman who lived as a witch in the forest and confessed all his sins, as if she were a priest appointed by God. To this she said, "Dear king, you have done what you should not have done. But since it has come to pass, it has come to pass. And we will have to see how you can do it better in the future. Take a pound of utter lard, bury it in the earth, and let 9 months pass. Then dig it up that place again and see what you find." So the king went to his house, ashamed and saddened because he had humiliated himself before the witch in the forest. Yet he listened to her advice, dug a hole in the garden at night, and placed a pot of utter lard in it, which he had obtained with some difficulty. Then he let 9 months go by. After this time had passed, he went again by night to the place where the pot lay buried and dug it up. To his great astonishment, he found a sleeping infant in the pot, though the lard had disappeared. He took out the infant and jubilantly brought it to his wife. She took it immediately to her breast, and behold, her milk flowed freely. And so the child thrived and became great and strong. He grew into a man who was greater and stronger than all others. When the king's son was 20 years old, he came before his father and said, I know that you have produced me through sorcery, and that I was not born as one of men. You have made me from the repentance of your sins, and this has made me strong. I am born from no woman, which makes me clever. I am strong and clever, and therefore I demand the crown of the realm from you. The old king was startled at his son's knowledge, but even more by his impetuous longing for regal power. He remained silent and thought, what has produced you, otter lard? Who bore you, the womb of the earth? I drew you from a pot. A witch humiliated me, and he decided to let his son be killed secretly. But because his son was stronger than others, he feared him, and therefore he wanted to take refuge in a trick. He went again to the sorceress in the forest and asked for her advice. She said, Dear king, you confess no sin to me this time because you want to commit a sin. I advise you to bury another pot with otter's lard and leave it to lie in the earth for 9 months. Then dig it out again and see what has happened. The king did what the sorceress advised him, and thenceforth his son became weaker and weaker. And when the king returned to the place where the pot lay after 9 months, he could dig his son's grave at the same time. He lay the dead one in the fosse beside the empty pot. But the king was saddened, and when he could no longer master his melancholy, he returned yet again to the sorceress one night and asked her for advice. She spoke to him. Dear king, you wanted a son, but the son wanted to be king himself and also had the power and cleverness for it. And then you wanted your son no more because of this you lost your son. Why are you complaining? You have everything, dear king. Everything, dear king, that you wanted. But the king said, You are right. I wanted it so, but I did not want this melancholy. Do you have any remedies against remorse? The sorceress spoke. Dear king, go to your son's grave, fill the pot again with otter's lard, and after 9 months, see what you find in the pot. The king did this, as he had been commanded, and henceforth he became happy and did not know why. When the 9 months had passed, he dug up the pot again. The body had disappeared, but in the pot there lay a sleeping infant, and he realized that the infant was his dead son. He took the infant to himself, and henceforth he grew as much in a week as other infants grow in a year. And when 20 weeks had passed, the son came before the father again and claimed his realm. But the father had learned from experience and already knew for a long time how everything would turn out. After the son had voiced his demand, the old king got up from his throne and embraced his son with tears of joy and crowned him king. And so the son, who had thus become king, was grateful to his father and held him in high esteem as long as his father was granted life. Okay, that's the story. Comments on the story?
Cycles of the season. 3 seasons in 9 months, and then 1 season of sleep and experience. 3 seasons of cycles of the seasons, and then 1 month of cycles of sleep and experience. And then it comes to the point where, oh, he naturalizes. There's a perennial. He made his naturalized perennial son and then crowned him royal.
Yeah.
That's a very good observation, Jordan. I was thinking of something different. I was thinking about my son, who told me yesterday if I wanted to hear a story that he had heard, and I said, sure. So he told me, well, there's a genie and he can make all three of your wishes come true, but you have to be very, very specific, okay? And I said, yeah, of course, you have to always be very specific with genies because they're tricksters.
Right.
And he said, well, so basically in the story, and then he translated the story to me with this man, he asked him for $1 million, but instead of giving the man $1 million, he gave him $1 million worth of pennies.
Mm-hmm.
So it's so funny because it's pennies. It's not papers, it's pennies.
Right. And you know that pennies are not legal tender. I don't know if you know that, but you can't actually spend it. You know, if you go to the bank, you can't actually spend pennies. You might be able to kind of store into taking a couple hundred pennies, but not very many, because, you know, if you had $100 in pennies, you couldn't carry it by far. It'd be an anchor. So that's amazing.
Well, and I think that, Amel, I'm glad you brought up the genie, because then if I go back to my example, that actually puts a finer grain on the old gardener's metaphor of first year roots, second year foliage, third year flowers and fruit, fourth year, whatever's left around, perennials. And with the roots, you know, you're nourishing the soil. With the foliage, you're popping off all the flowers and deadheading to drive the energy back to the foliage, back to the roots. And in the third year, the flowers and fruits. So there's a whole genie piece of, you know, don't just look at what you see, nourish also what you don't see. And that means be specific so you don't get $1 million pennies. You get a garden.
Right. Okay, so let's press on because we have about 5 pages to go here. And there's lots more in this section. But I spoke to my serpent. In truth, my serpent, I didn't know that you are also a teller of fairy tales. So tell me, how should I interpret your fairy tale? Serpent, imagine that you are the old king and have a son. I, who is the son? Serpent, well, I thought that you had just spoken of a son who doesn't make you very happy. I, what? You don't mean that I should crown him? Serpent, yes, who else? I, that's uncanny, but what about the sorceress? Serpent, the sorceress is a motherly woman whose son you should be, since you are a child renewing himself in you. I, oh no, will it be impossible for me to be a man? Serpent, sufficient manhood, and beyond the fullness of childhood, which is why you need the mother. I'm ashamed to be a child. Serpent, and thus you kill your son. A creator needs the mother, since you are not a woman. This is a terrible truth. I thought and hoped that I could be a man in every way. Serpent, you cannot do this for the sake of the son. You create means, mother and child. The thought that I must remain a child is unbearable. Serpent, for the sake of your son, you must be a child and leave him the crown. The thought that I must remain a child is humiliating and shattering. Serpent, a salutary antidote against power. Don't resist being a child, otherwise you resist your son, whom you want above all. There's a footnote here. Let's see, that's Okay. In Blackfoot Book 4, the word work is used instead of sun in the next few lines. Okay, so it's equivalent, making equivalence of sun and work. Don't resist being a child, otherwise you resist your son, whom you want above all. It's true, I want the sun and survival, but the price for this is high. Serpent, the sun stands higher. You are smaller and weaker than the sun. That is a bitter truth, but it can't be avoided. Don't be defiant. Children must be well behaved. Damned scorn. Serpent, man of mockery, I'll have patience with you. My wells should flow for you and pour forth the drink of salvation. If all lands parch with thirst and everyone comes to you begging for the water of life, so subject yourself to the sun. Where am I going to take hold of the immeasurable? My knowledge and ability are poor. My power is not enough. At which the serpent curled up, gathered herself into knots, and said, do not ask after the morrow. Sufficient unto you is the day. You need not worry about the means. Let everything grow, let everything sprout. The sun grows out of himself. Any comments here? Okay, what I would observe is that it's important to understand this idea of sun and work, because here Jung is realizing that he has a lot of work to do, that what this 2-month period of the Red Book has done for him is revealed to him how much work hasn't been done, and especially on the irrational side. And so this is why he says that the Red Book is the prima materia of a whole lifetime of work, because at this point, the sun here is his visioning of how much work he has to do in order to even not fully express, but even partially express what he has seen during this work, or this time, this 2 months. He has envisioned all the work that is undone, that needs to be done in an extremely scholarly manner in order for it to be accepted into the world of the logos, into rationality. And because he's seeing that it's all irrational, and that all of his work has to be on this irrational side. And at that point in his life, after going through a midlife crisis, after breaking with Freud and so on, which had happened within the year, it must have seemed like an enormous task. And he wrote for 45 years after this, and all of it is based on this. You can see it clearly if you've done any of the reading. Jordan, you have a comment?
Well, and I think it goes with, semantics are just semantics. I won't take issue with the midlife crisis, but I do take issue with society thinks there's a midlife crisis. It's a midlife rebirth, where then we at around 37 to 39 to 42 take hold, induce our own rites of passage, and we birth the rest of our lives. We open up not to mature, but to live and love in our way. And I think even most of the psychological studies say that at 42, there's a jump in potential neuroplasticity, where your brain will consciously and unconsciously rewire to literally become more you. And I think that he did this, and in these stories at this time, he was navigating and documenting this time of passage across. Even with the king here, we really get a 3-4 year of seasons, which that's an important piece for the naturalized perennial of oneself.
So Wolf Olivier here on the YouTube chat says, as per Hellman, the child archetype is a corrector. We need to let it in our thoughts to compensate for the one-sidedness of our conscious mind. He goes on, it is an active system in the present that is here to act and support. And so, Vern, go ahead.
I was going to say, and connect. I would extend that, because that childlike connection literally connects us to nature, and not that I can become nature. I always am nature, but am I a dead leaf, or am I living through the cycles of, deciduous tree, leaves and buds and fall and come back to resurrect from the soil that I just broke down in. So I think adding to the corrector, I think the corrector is to turn us back into nature, which we already are. We don't have to think ourselves into it. And then it becomes life and love, except I think it becomes more simply life.
Yeah. I always think of the epiphany that I had with respect to Jackson Pollock's life work. But as expressed in the movie Pollock. And in the movie Pollock, there's a scene where Lee Krasner is, before she married Pollock, was, I guess, living with him or very closely working with him. And one time she came upon Pollock, who was doing a huge mural. And it didn't have any connection to anything in life that she could recognize. And she says, but Jackson, you have to refer back to something in nature. And Pollock's response is, I am nature. Mm-hmm. And I completely understand and grok that concept, because what we do minute by minute in our lives is nature, and we need to be comfortable with that and find a way to be comfortable with that. I like most people who were raised as rationalists, thought Jackson Pollock's work was a crock when I first saw it, because I said, any kindergartner could do this, and the truth is, no, they can't. They couldn't, and
I'm sorry, but
go ahead.
I love that you just said that, because I remember responding. Someone said any kindergartner could do this, and I said, "Yep." And you, as an adult, cannot. So yeah. How are you disparaging that? It as kindergarten, because you're unable to do it. So,
right. However, what he was doing was nature, his nature, mm-hmm. and now I'm recognizing that in my own work. Okay, to the mm-hmm. point where I think people might be interested in my pieces that I'm doing. And so now I have to go back into the rational world and figure out how to use eBay or whatever it is to see if I can sell some of my work. Maybe I can. We'll see. Maybe people will cherish it yet, but my friends who are receiving my pieces this year are going to be surprised when I'm sending them these maroon portfolios where I've been carrying my own work, which isn't sold, but my portfolio of work. So I'm sending them each one of those, and I'm saying on the gift card, this is the wrapper for your Christmas present.
Nice.
But I'm not explaining what the Christmas present is yet. And so Sherry says, without the shade of trees, one cannot become a strong tree and give to others. The root is the source of water. I love the film and Pollock's art. His life was fascinating. Yeah, it was fascinating. I mean, he had some physical issues, but he knew what he was about. And you know, for example, I saw there's a YouTube video about moving his mural that he did for Peggy Guggenheim. He did it for her living room, and there's quite a scene in the movie Pollock about that mural. But the mural was ultimately sold by her estate, and I think it's now in St. Louis or someplace like that, and in a museum. But there's a whole video that's a documentary of about an hour's length in which they discuss the restoration of that mural, because it's now was made at least 70 years ago, and they had to be very careful when they moved it. And so anyway, I'm going to go on because we need to get to the end of this. So the myth commences. The one that need only be lived, not sung, the one that sings itself. I subject myself to the sun, the one engendered by sorcery, the unnaturally born, the son of the frogs, who stands at the waterside and speaks with his fathers and listens to their nocturnal singing. Truly, he is full of mysteries and superior in strength to all men. No man has produced him, and no woman has given birth to him. The absurd has entered the age-old mother, and the son has grown in the deepest ground. He sprang up and was put to death. He rose again, was produced anew in the way of sorcery, and grew more swiftly than before. I gave him the crown that unites the separated, and so he unites the separated for me. I gave him the power, and thus he commands, since he is superior in strength and cleverness to all others. Now, this, I have a marginal note here, the work. And so he now has flowing into him the work that he's going to be doing. And I always respect the comment of my friend Tim Holmes, who is always paying attention to his muse. And that's what he means by what is happening. For Tim, we can call it the muse. For others, it's, you know, what you're going to do. What are you going to do with the rest of your life? That's the issue. You know, okay, you're in your midlife crisis, swell, but what's coming out of it, right? And that has to be, you have to grok that and start working, and you don't always know where it's going. So for example, as I was going through certain psychological changes at that age. I didn't know that I would be fascinated by Jung and be doing this sort of thing 36 years later. No way did I have any such idea in my mind. And yet, I was called to do something every day, every week, for all that time. And, you know, I carried a lot of these big tomes of Jung's around the world with me multiple times. And I remember landing in Jeddah, and after about 10 times, I started to say to myself, wow, you go around the world multiple times and you're landing in Jeddah again and you're still the same person. You know, it's still you. You know, you haven't changed, right? And it's still you that's landing there. And I ultimately landed there probably at least 20 times in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. And I also did a lot of work in Riyadh and other cities of Saudi Arabia. But I remember specifically landing in Jeddah one time and seeing the city come up below the airplane, and realizing that, you know, no matter what I did, no matter where you go, no matter what you do, there you are. It's you. You're not, you know, you're not going to escape the skin. And so then what? And so,
Well, I love that story for the simple reason that one of my favorite quotes is, I can never swim the same river twice, because tomorrow the river has flowed on and I have changed, but it's still the same river I love and I'm still me. And, you know, there's always as life moves on. And I think that you landing over and over in Jeddah is a metaphor of that. You were different, but you were still yourself. And like, you notice that you haven't changed because you're you, but is there a different building down there? Is there, you know, and it's, you're still going to the same spot. And
yeah.
I think it's a wonderful story about, I can never swim the same river twice.
Yeah. So Cherie says, did one see the one piece of art of Pollock's that a person found in a garage sale and bought it for nothing? It was truly one of his. And I would say I have seen that story and so on. And, you know, there's no question that it's one of his. And there's also a wonderful story and documentary on YouTube about the lost Leonardo. Okay, and which is a very similar story. A piece was found that was in rough shape in a sale, and some people thought that it might be a lost Leonardo, but they weren't sure and they couldn't prove it and so on. And ultimately, the person who found it, I think, sold it for something like $175,000. And they were happy. You know, they, out of a garage sale that where they bought something for $7, they got $175,000 for it. But it was ultimately purchased by Mohammed bin Salman, who's the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, and it's going into a museum in Saudi Arabia that he's building up. And the provenance is now accepted that it is a lost Leonardo, and it's a painting of Christ that is very much like the Mona Lisa in many ways. Okay, and that's the incredible thing about it, and where the provenance is proven. And so you can believe it's not Leonardo or do whatever you like, but nonetheless, the provenance has been proven. But anyway, there's simply no doubt of a true Pollock, and ultimately there will be no doubt of a true Conover, although I sign my paintings with Skip and the year. I don't bother with my surname. I did not give way to him willingly, but one out of insight. No man binds above and below together, but he who did not grow like a man and yet has the form of a man is capable of binding them. My power is paralyzed, but I survive in my son. I set aside my concern that he may master the people. I am solitary. The people rejoice at him. I was powerful. Now I am powerless. I was strong. Now I am weak. Since then, he has taken all the strength into himself. Everything has turned itself upside down for me. Now, what was I thinking here? I love the beauty of the beautiful, the spirit of those rich in spirit, the strength of the strong. I lacked at the stupidity of the stupid. I despised the weakness of the weak, the meanness of the mean, and hated the badness of the bad. But now I must love the beauty of the ugly, the spirit of the foolish, and the strength of the weak. I must admire the stupidity of the clever, must respect the weakness of the strong and the meanness of the generous, and honor the goodness of the bad. Where does that leave mockery, contempt, and hatred? Just speak to somebody who you dislike, whether it's because they're poor or because they're ugly, or in your idea of what that might be. And often what you hear from those people is profound, okay, in my experience. And you can't mock them, and you can't have contempt for them. And so, you have to be careful about who you mock and what you find ugly, because others may find it beautiful. Okay.
Well, yeah, and I think that's, you're pretty much saying inspect your expectations. And
Yeah.
expectations are typically just another word for blind spots of your own personal dogma and opinion. And I find that a prime example, if there's someone who I don't like and or almost completely disrespect, if they say something and mean another thing, they're a manipulative liar. Except if my friend says something and they mean something else, they're just being ironic. So, I mean, that's a whole fork in the road of, oh, look at my judgy.
Yeah.
So, and I think the ability to get something profound when someone says something, maybe they don't mean another thing. Maybe I just misinterpret it and they said exactly what they meant. So there's a whole lot that circles around, I think, in that.
Right. Okay. And so as I was sitting here listening to your response, Jordan, this bookmark fell out of my copy of the Red Book, and I just want to share it with you here, because when something falls out in that way, it often has some meaning. And so these are bookmarks that I made for Confluence 22. And let's see, is it upside down? I guess it's upside down. All right. So I made them and put the name of the confluence and that it was in Helena and so on last year. And then on the other side, I put a quote. And so the quote that I put was, "At every decisive moment, you let me believe in myself." And so there's the quote. And it really is apropos to what we're talking about, which is you have to believe in yourself. And what happens is at the decisive moments, you get to believe in yourself.
Oh, what's interesting is I just reached over. Mine was always right over here on the side of my desk, right behind the whole purpose of Jung's psychology is, and it's not there.
It's not there?
No. So I'm like, I've been cycling through some books, and it may be over on the bookshelf in between two books that I just picked up and put back on this. So I laughed when you pulled that out. I went, oh, well, I'm going to grab my, it's not there. So
Interesting.
yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to read that last sentence again and then go on. Where does that leave mockery, contempt, and hatred? They went over to the sun as a token of power. His mockery is bloody, and how contemptuously his eyes flash. His hatred is a singing fire. Enviable one, you son of the gods, how can one fail to obey you? You broke me in two. He cut me up. He yokes the separated. Without him, I would fall apart, but my life went on with him. My love remained with me. Okay, thus I entered into solitude with a black look on my face, full of resentment and outrage at my son's dominion. How can my son arrogate my power? I went into my garden and sat down in a lonely spot on rocks by the water and brooded darkly. I called the serpent my nocturnal companion, who lay with me on the rocks through many twilights, imparting her serpent wisdom. But then my son emerged from the water, great and powerful, the crown on his head, with a swirling lion's mane, shimmering serpent skin covering his body. And he said to me, and there's a footnote here, the preceding paragraph was added in the draft on April the 19th, 1914. And here's what he said to me, quote, I come to you and demand your life. What do you mean? Have you even become a god? I rise again. I had become flesh. Now I return to eternal glitter and shimmer, to the eternal embers of the sun, and I leave your earthliness. You will remain with me. You have been in immortal company long enough. Your work belongs to the earth. What a speech. Weren't you wallowing in the earth and the under earth? I had become man and beast, and now ascend again to my own country. Where is your country? In the light, in the egg, in the sun, in what is innermost and compressed, in the eternal longing embers. So rises the sun in your heart and streams out into the cold world. How you transfigure yourself. I want to vanish from your sight. You ought to live in darkness, darkest solitude. Men, not God, should illumine your darkness. How hard and solemn you are. I'd like to bathe your feet with my tears, dry them with my hair. I'm raving. Am I a woman? Also a woman, also a mother, pregnant, giving birth awaits you. O Holy Spirit, grant me a spark of your eternal light. You are with child. I feel the torment and the fear and the desolation of pregnant women. Do you go from me, my God? You have the child. My soul, do you still exist? You serpent, you frog, you magically produced boy whom my hands buried, you ridiculed, despised, hated one, who appeared to me in a foolish form. Woe betide those who have seen their soul and felt it with hands. I am powerless in your hand, my God. The pregnant woman, belongs to fate. Release me. I rise to the eternal realm. Will I never hear your voice again? Oh, damn deception. What am I asking? You'll talk to me again tomorrow. You'll chat over and over in the mirror. Do not rail. I will be present and not present. You will hear and not hear me. I will be and not be. You utter gruesome riddles. Such is my language, and to you I leave the understanding. No one besides you has your God. He is always with you, yet you see him in others, and thus he is never with you. You strive to draw to yourself those who you seem to possess your God. You will come to see that they do not possess him, and that you alone have him. Thus you are alone among men, in the crowd, and yet alone, solitude in multitude. Ponder this. I suppose I ought to remain silent after what you have said, but I cannot. My heart bleeds when I see you go from me. Let me go. I shall return to you in renewed form. Do you see the sun, how it sinks red into the mountains? This day's work is accomplished and a new sun returns. Why are you mourning the sun of today? Must night fall? Is it not mother of the day? Because of this night I want to despair. Why lament? It is fate. Let me go. My wings grow, and the longing toward eternal light swells up powerfully in me. You can no longer stop me. Stop your tears and let me ascend with cries of joy. You are a man of the fields. Think of your crops. I become light, like the bird that rises up into the skies of morning. Do not stop me. Do not complain. Already I hover. The cry of life escapes from me. I can no longer hold back my supreme pleasure. I must go up. It has happened. The last cord tears away. My wings bear me up. I dive up into the sea of light. You who are down there, you distant twilight being, you fade from me. Where have you gone? Something has happened. I am lamed. Has the God not left my sight? Okay, then there's a break in the paragraph. Where is the God? What has happened? How empty, how utterly empty. Should I proclaim to men how you vanished? Should I preach the gospel of God-forsaken solitude? Should we all go into the desert and strew ashes on our heads, since the God has left us? I believe and accept that the God is something different from me. He swung high and jubilant joy. He swung high with jubilant joy. I remain in the night of pain, no longer with the God, but alone with myself. Let's see, there's a footnote. And the footnote says, with my soul. So alone with my soul, alone with myself. Now shut, you bronze doors. I opened the flood of devastation and murder brooding over the peoples. Open so as to midwife the god. Shut, may not mountains bury you and seas flow over you. This paragraph was added in the draft. Okay. I came to myself, and the footnote reads, the corrected draft has instead, I came to myself. Okay, so I came to myself, or I came to myself. The corrected draft has instead, I came to myself. A giddy and pitiful figure, my eye. I didn't want this fellow as my companion. I found myself with him. I'd prefer a bad woman or a wayward hound, but one's own eye, this horrifies me. And another footnote. The remainder is added in the draft. An opus is needed, and that one can squander an opus is needed that one can squander decades on and do it out of necessity. I must catch up with a piece of the Middle Ages within myself. We have only finished the Middle Ages of others. I must begin early, in that period when the hermits died out. A sarcasm,
Asceticism.
asceticism, Inquisition, torture are close at hand and impose themselves. The barbarian requires barbaric means of education. My eye, you are a barbarian. I want to live with you. Therefore, I will carry you through an utterly medieval hell until you are capable of making living with you bearable. You should be the vessel and womb of life. Therefore, I shall purify you. The touchstone is being alone with oneself. This is the way. And there's a footnote. In 1930, Jung stated, a movement back into the Middle Ages is sort of regression, but it is not personal. It is a historical regression, a regression into the past of the collective unconscious. This always takes place when the way ahead is not free, when there is an obstacle from which you recoil, or when you need to get something out of the past in order to climb over the wall ahead. Around this time, Jung began working intensively on medieval theology. The type, and that's references to Psychological Types, Collected Work 6, Chapter 1. The type problem in the history of the mind in antiquity and the Middle Ages. And then at this point, the handwritten draft has finis surrounded by a box.
Fini. Finished.
Okay, but I think it's finis because fini is French, but he has written it in Latin, I believe.
Sarah, what is the Latin meaning? Do you know?
End.
Go fini.
So fini, yeah. But
okay. I found this on the web.
So
Siri
that
just
is
Siri just tried to tell us what it meant. Okay, I found this on the web. I'm like, stop.
Oh, hilarious. Okay, well,
Oh, funny.
Jung comes to the end of Liber Secundus and sees the way ahead, but he realizes how much work it's going to be and realizes that in order to have any meaning in terms of what the collective unconscious is about, he had to go back to medieval times. You want to comment on this, Jordan?
Well, I
before
think
go
that
on?
his whole house, no electricity, no indoor plumbing. And he even said it right there, right before the end, a work that will be decades. And so, it wasn't an illusion. This was he clearly said it right there. Here's the rest of my work. And then he proceeded to do it, and he just lived it.
Yep, he definitely lived it. And what he really had experienced was what was going on in the collective unconscious before World War One. And so now, 7 months later, or 5 months later, I'm sorry, we're at the end of February 1914. The war started August 1st, 1914. So 5 months later, the war started. And obviously, he was having all this prefiguration of the war. And comprehending that it wasn't only himself, but also the collective that was going through this. And but most people didn't have the wherewithal to even even think about this, let alone interpret it and put it in a form that could be appreciated. And as as Shamdasani pointed out, he was of mixed emotion in 1961 when he was near dying, and the question came up about whether the Red Book should be published, and he said, and who would understand it? Okay, who would understand it? And I think the fact is that those of us who are listening here finally do understand it, and understand its context in terms of Jung's life and its context in connection with our own lives. And when you're faced with your fate, then you have to live it regardless.
And he's pretty much saying, do this. This is my sketchbook. This is my life. Do this.
Right. And if we put it in the context of today's current events, we put it in the context of the war in Ukraine and the war between Palestine and Israel, we see exactly the type of regression that he was talking about. So all of humanity isn't at the same stage of development. And so people have regressed to, earlier hatreds. I urge upon you once again the movie Mr. Jones, which was a 2019 movie, which parallels the work of Orwell on Animal Farm to the events of early Bolshevism, okay, where Stalin had put together these 5-year plans, and he basically was stealing the grain of Ukraine, and people referred to it as Stalin's gold, but at the same time he was starving the people of Ukraine. And so I've seen on news reports in the last couple of years, women especially who remember that time and remember starving and living off tree bark and that sort of thing, when Stalin was stealing their crops. and so we can see that medieval hatred that must have existed in the Ukrainians before, during the time of the Soviet Union, and why the Soviet Union ultimately couldn't survive because these things, Stalin's behavior couldn't be forgotten. And the same is true when you go to Jerusalem and you see the Temple of David, and on top of, or the Temple of Solomon, I'm sorry, the Temple of Solomon, and the West Wall, the so-called Wailing Wall, which was a monumental construction done more than 1,000 years before Christ. And on top of it is built Al-Aqsa Mosque, which is a very holy place of the Muslim faith. And within a mile of it, walking down the middens, or the dump of the Temple of Solomon. Okay, in other words, that's what it was. People were living inside the temple, and they were throwing their trash over the walls for hundreds of years, thousands of years. And so if you go today down the Via Dolorosa, the Road of Roses, to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, which is not a long distance. It's maybe a half a mile or so from what would have been the entrance of the Temple of Solomon. You're actually walking down a landfill, which is the landfill of where the Temple of Solomon was dumping its trash in those days. And you get to Golgotha, where Christ was crucified, and it was a place where they were crucifying people. It was certainly within a mile of the Temple of Solomon in Christ's time. And you see how much of the collective unconscious of all of the Abrahamic religions is centered on that 1 mile in diameter circle. It's incredible. It's just incredible. And so when we see man's inhumanity to man pop up in that part of the world, it is a regression back to those times, as incredible as that may seem. And it wasn't a short period. I mean, the Temple of Solomon started to be built about 1000 BC. Christ came along 1,000 years later, and Muhammad the Prophet, peace be upon him, lived in 640 AD, or wrote the Quran in 640 AD, and had his visions then. So we're talking about a period of roughly 1,700 years, and what must have been developing in the collective unconscious of humanity during that very long period. And here we have Jung having that full realization, okay, all in one go. And
even here in the text, it wasn't the depravity of the woman or something, but honestly, I can't remember the verb. I closed the text, but it was like, wow, that's the most sexist line overtly I may have ever heard. and it's just
Hmm.
passed off as normal, and it's not normal.
Yeah.
And and so that just the sensitivities, actually the sensitivities of the proclivities,
Right.
the proclivities.
Proclivities.
I mean, what you're
Yeah.
set up to tolerate is completely different. And so that was just simple language for him, and it would be normal. But now it's, wow, that's a lit fuse.
Yeah. Right. I'll leave the YouTube comments to you to read and interpret as you wish, but I just want to sort of cover a small revelation that I had, which is, at the beginning of the same order of magnitude, which was when I received this postcard from my friend Tim Holmes of his statue entitled "Returning the Nails." And so this image represents Mary, Mother of God, returning the nails to the Roman authorities. And on the back of this, I'll just read Tim's note to me. Dear Skip, it is said that after Tiananmen's massacre, the Chinese government sent bills to the families of the protesters for the cost of their execution. Whether true or not, this is the cast of human evil. In researching early metallurgy, I discovered that in Christ's time, iron was a strategic material. I imagine if nails were used for the crucifixions, the families of the victims would be charged with returning the nails to the government. This image is Mary post crucifixion. Peace. And when I received this postcard from Tim, which I don't know. Move when I read his message and understood then the implication of the statue that Tim had done. And it doesn't matter whether in real life this ever happened to Mary, but what does matter is that it did happen in the psyche of Tim Holmes. And it's a recognition of a manifestation of pure evil, and that the rational represented by the nails is only half of the story. And, I've added to this a quote from Mary saying, "Here are your nails, I'll carry the future with me." Mm-hmm. And the point was that she would carry Christianity to a quarter of the world's population. And of course, Muhammad, peace be upon him, carried it to another quarter of the world's population. And
she's also saying, here's your rationality of war. I have no need for this.
Right. And so what I would urge everyone to do as we end the Red Book here, I mean, this is the two main parts of the Red Book. The Red Book also does contain scrutinies, which is something that was written later. including the 7 sermons to the dead. But just think about what happened during this 2-month period. I mean, to Jung, I mean, the epilogue is on page 555, and we are on page 458. So there's another 100 pages, but only about 1/6 of the book, let's say. So
I remember in the first, can you hear me?
yes, I can.
Okay, great. I remember in the very beginning of The Magician, he spoke about that magic has no reason, that we give reason to the magic.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Simply it is. And so what's significant here for all of us in the 21st century is to recognize that Carl Jung did discover the collective unconscious and its significance to the world at this point, you know, and or you know, at this, you know, 9-month period from the time he started to have his prefiguration dreams, October 12th, 1913, until August the 1st, 1914. Jung was actually experiencing the very intense collective unconscious happenings that were occurring in Europe at that time. And it's why he could say on August the 1st that he was the happiest person alive, because now he knew that this was not only his psyche, but the psyche of everyone in Europe at that time that was being manifest. And obviously that was hugely ugly. We killed, and by we, I mean we humans, killed about 10 million people, the whole generation of Germans and Englishmen, and lots of Americans too, a couple 100,000 Americans during that time. But I mean, the American part of it isn't really relevant, because it's the collective unconscious of Western Europe that was manifest there in World War I. And then it was the collective unconscious of the whole world that was manifest in World War II. And so I urge everyone to take a step back from your life today and just contemplate what is happening in the world today, what that can mean to your own life, and how you can change it. And remember the essay that I read at the beginning of this, you were made for this. And I'll close with Clarissa Pinkola-Estes' closing. I hope you will write this on your wall. When a great ship is in harbor and moored, it is safe, there can be no doubt. But that is not what great ships are built for. And so what I urge all of you to do is to recognize that you too are a great ship. You too have something that you can do to make the world better and to resolve these issues, because these issues relate to the entire existence of the human species, and we have to get a handle on them. And Jung didn't know what the answer is. I don't know what the answer is, but each one of us in our own way can find small pieces of the answer until the answer becomes manifest to all of us. That's about, I guess, the best homily I can give about this process that we've been carrying through for a couple of years now. Jordan, I'll shut up and let you speak.
I think that's a great closing.
Okay. Amela, do you have any thought that you want to share? Okay, and Patrick. All right, well, we'll leave it at that for today. And I want to wish everyone who can hear this a very happy holidays and a happy new year. And may 2024 be a better year for all of us. I pray that that is the case. So,
Same to you. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year.
bye-bye. Take care now. And by
Happy
the way,
holidays. Oh, sorry.
yeah,
Happy
that's right.
holidays.
Happy holidays, everybody.
By the way, Jordan, you got your Christmas present already. It was early delivered.
Oh, yeah, good.
Right.
Let me see. That.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which way to? Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sorry my bank account couldn't hit anything else for the holidays, so that's that.
No. It's no.